Welcome to the First Read Ultimate Spider-Man podcast, where we break down Bendis' iconic run on Ultimate Spider-Man, issues 1 through 160 in Earth 1610. I'm Zach, and I'm joined today by the man who was once called a pleasure to have in class, Johnny O.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you? That has
Great.
two meanings now, because kids could
Okay.
like to be in your class.
That's true. Well, that's like my go-to whenever I am talking to a kid or something, I'll be like, you're just a pleasure to have in class. Or that's what I'll tell their parents, because I know that's just like a classic.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
tickled pink as a kid whenever I saw it on my little end of the year report card or whatever. I'm like, wow, I really was, wasn't I?
Pleasure to have in class.
And now I know they just had nothing else to say about me.
When I signed up a bunch of yearbooks at the end of the year this year, I just don't have anything to say about the kids either, so I just gave everyone a have a great summer or something.
Wow,
and then the kids that I do know, I'd actually write something about. So if the kids compared, they can very easily see which kid Mr.Ovat had something to say about and which kid he was like, I don't know this person's name. Shoot.
No, you meant with every ounce of your being that you really hope they have a great summer.
I do. That's true.
Yeah. What's up, dude?
We're in a golden age of television, Zach.
Oh my god. It's impossible to figure out every night what we want to watch. It's like you have limited time and unlimited choices.
The Boys came out yesterday.
Mhm.
We're recording this on Friday. And I mean, I stayed up till like 4 a.m. and watched The Boys when it came out. And man, I don't know if are you caught up on all 4?
We
episodes?
watched the first episode last night.
Zach was watching Spy Family. Zach can't watch The Boys because he's watching Spy Family.
Dude, I am fully Spy Family pilled. I'm like gonna buy the manga, like all 11 volumes of it. And I always say I hate these little Funko Pop things, but I end up getting more as like gifts or
Yeah.
oh well, it's my favorite character and they already have this one, so why not?
That's how I get like all of the ones that I have are just
Yeah.
like gifts.
I want to find out if they have one for Spy Family because
I bet
Anya
they
Forger
do.
is a little cutie, and I think she would make a great Funko Pop.
Oh, I bet they do. Maybe. Yeah, I'm seeing some. Yeah. All right, listeners. Zach needs a Spy Family Funko Pop.
But I also
I could buy him it, but I'm not going to.
I also watched 73 Yards from Doctor Who.
Okay, well, okay.
I gotta talk to you about
There's
that.
There's just so much good TV. I know, and the Doctor Who finale is tonight. It comes on at 7 p.m. tonight. So
dude, there's got to be like a chart
psyched.
Someone's made about like movies being great and TV sucking, and then TV being great and movies sucking, because that's like where we're at right now in culture. But I watched Dot and Bubble last week. We talked about that, and I was like, wow, this is the best Doctor Who episode I've ever seen. And you were like,
this is a Doctor Who podcast now.
Is it? And I was like, yeah, of course it was. It was by miles the best Doctor Who episode I've seen. And then I watched 73 Yards, and I was like, is this show just better than I thought it was?
I told you this season is like back to being like fun, and the episodes are good and everything. Dude, probably except for that, like the second one. Like there's one called Space Babies that I was like, oh no.
There's always a filler episode.
Yeah, and that was like the first episode or so, or maybe the second. But since then, it's been pretty good.
I am shocked because I watched most of the Matt Smith era, and I never remembered it like being this good. It was just kind of something on in the background.
Well, so the guy who's running the show now is Russell T Davies, and he was the showrunner from season 1 to season 4. And then you just get like some episodes written by a guy named Stephen Moffat, who was really good. And then he took over during the Matt Smith years and the Peter Capaldi years. And it is definitely like the show just has a different feel to it. Like, and now Russell T Davies is back. He's the showrunner again. Um, and he's just like more like fun and campy kind of. Like the Stephen Moffat, I liked his eras also, but they're more like serious, and
See, I
they more
would have
like have a complete storyline that is like you have to watch it every week to kind of follow what's going on in certain ways. Or I don't know if that's actually true now that I think about that, but yeah, the Russell T Davies is just like fun, and you have goofy looking villains kind of, and he's the one who's running it now. But funny enough, Stephen Moffat did write 73 Yards. So when that episode came up and his name came up in the writers, it's like, oh my God, Stephen Moffat is back writing an episode? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would call both of those episodes more serious. I mean, they were like moments in them. They weren't scary, but there were moments that I would say were like chilling or like, ooh, this is kind of thrilling.
Definitely 73 Yards fits the tone more of like Stephen Moffat episodes, but Dot and Bubble is like very much like bright colors and goofy characters and goofy monsters, that are I don't know. That seems like I could see that being in like the first series or second series and it fitting in like perfectly.
Yeah.
But anyway, 73
I'm a
Yards, you
sucker,
really
John,
liked it?
I'm a sucker for like bright, vibrant colors for a very dark premise or story.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a fun juxtaposition.
Yep.
But yeah, 73 yards was delightful.
Okay. The reason I specifically texted you it afterwards was because probably for the first like 40 minutes of that episode, I was like on the edge of my seat. I like was so I just like really liked it. And then dude, I like didn't know I didn't like how that ended at all. It like didn't explain anything.
Yeah.
It didn't. And my
It
hope
like
is,
technically
yeah.
resolved, but it leaves more questions than answers.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like now it's been a couple weeks since I watched it, but it's like I don't understand the Mad Jack thing. Was that guy Mad Jack, or did he just happen to have that? Was that politician the guy that they were like trapping in the cloth that she kicked over at the beginning of the thing? And then what happened to the doctor during that whole time? And was the woman like an old Ruby? And it just doesn't, it didn't really make any sense. Like you said, it had more questions than answered. But I am hopeful that with that line in the last episode about the CCTV footage of something being 66 yards away, which is kind of like an important thing. It's like the CCTV footage of like Ruby's birth mother dropping her off when she was a baby. I think somehow they're going to bring back in like the plot points from 73 Yards into this finale, and we might get some answers for it. Russell T Davies says just about every question that you could have going into the finale will be answered in the finale.
Well, that's awesome because
Yeah.
that episode was like a 10 out of 10 vibe, but was an incomplete story. If it has a part 2 that maybe fills in some of the missing details and keeps the vibe, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Peak television.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Oh, well, I'm glad you're liking it. You and Shyla will just have to watch it. Zach's sister-in-law loves Doctor Who.
I got to tell her that this season is like actually good because I think she fell off at some point, like probably when most
Yeah.
people fell off when it was bad for a few years. But I'll when she gets back from Romania, I'll tell her, hey, let's sit down and watch this season.
Yeah. There was one that do you guys ever watch Bridgerton?
Oh my God,
I know that's like everybody's show right now.
Shyla is so into that.
Well, so last week was the part 1 of the finale. The week before that was like a Bridgerton episode, and they all like go back into Bridgerton times, and the villains are like Bridgerton fans who are trying to like cosplay Bridgerton, you know?
That's
Um
fun.
it's kind of fun. It's pretty damn goofy. But do you know who Jonathan Groff is?
No.
You've seen him before, I'm sure. He's the king in Hamilton, if you've ever maybe
Oh,
seen
like
that.
the original run.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
He is in that as like a companion for the episode, basically. And he's a lot of fun in it too. He's pretty good.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Dude, I kept thinking about Marvel Comics. Here's our little segue. When I was watching 72
Yeah.
yards, or 73
73
yards.
yards.
Okay. I kept thinking about Marvel Comics and how, like, the time travel laws in Marvel, usually some stories kind of change it, but usually if you do time travel and change history, you didn't really change history. You created a branching timeline, and that's what it seems like Ruby did, because otherwise her, like, taking out that evil prime minister guy wouldn't matter because she erases that future, right? It only has like weight in the story if she saved some other timeline and then went back to her own timeline to live her life. And then just the rest
that yeah. And now, okay, so that guy wasn't even a person yet, right? Because he's like younger than Ruby.
I guess,
So
yeah.
so if she
She
stops
could have
him,
just killed him as a baby.
but if she stops him in the future and now all of a sudden it's, 40 years earlier, they're back to like present day, that guy is still could still
Going to
be.
happen.
Yeah, and we specifically even know about him because like that's the guy the doctor mentions at the beginning of the episode. So that
Exactly.
guy existed, and he's not Mad Jack, who they like. I don't know. I need more explanation in that one. That's like a classic Stephen Moffat episode right there. Great episode. It just didn't really have the ending we were all hoping for, It didn't stick the landing. Really
Okay.
good at coming up with questions and like making people be like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?" Not that great at like filling out the answers for them.
Again, that's another similarity it has with Marvel Comics because so many comics can be described as it's really fun, but it doesn't make sense. Or like they set up an incredible premise and then the writer left the book before they could see it through,
Yeah.
This kind of felt like that vibe. There's a different you got to be built different, John, to be a fandom for these kind of things where you just take something for how fun it is and tell yourself that like some of the details don't necessarily matter.
Yeah.
But then also, I know I've told you before about Excalibur. It's like the Doctor Who of the Marvel universe, okay? It's just fun little wacky British romps, and sometimes it's really dark, and sometimes it's really bright and vibrant, and sometimes they're in like a fantasy land, and sometimes they're in different dimensions, and sometimes everyone's clothes rip off for no random reason, and it's like a sex farce, and it's just the goofiest thing ever, and it's like tangentially related to the X-Men because it's like half of it is Captain Britain and his characters and like Captain Britain lore, which I love. But then the other half is like Rachel Summers and Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler leave the X-Men and they go over to Europe and they join this team with like Captain Britain and his girlfriend. And so it's like X-Men characters in this wacky British anything goes kind of story. And
that's fun.
I watching the more I watch Doctor Who, the more I realize how related they are. And there have even been like specific things like they have the Weird Happenings organization, WHO, and that's supposed to be their version of UNIT. And there's like certain characters that have the same names as like people from Doctor Who.
Oh, so they're like
it's
trying
very
to,
intentional.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, that's awesome.
But it's
That's
from
fun.
like the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s, like the heyday of X-Men comics. So,
well, since we're talking about Marvel and Doctor Who at the same time, my sister and I watched The Winter Soldier recently, like earlier this week. I think it was like the 10-year anniversary for that or something
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah, that
soon.
sounds right.
And it's so good, Zach. It's probably the best Marvel movie, I think. I
You
think it's
think?
my favorite. All of the Captain America movies are my favorite, but they're my favorites because they're the best. Like they're just the scene the 5-minute scene of Captain America going in the elevator and then escaping Shield and riding the motorcycle and taking down the Shield helicarrier or the Quinjet on his motorcycle. It is like the best 3 minutes that Marvel has ever done.
And that's like the only movie that gave us the Triskelion.
Yeah, it is. I guess it is because they blow it up at the end.
And the Triskelion is like specifically an Ultimate Universe thing. There's not a Triskelion in Earth 616. So, as an Ultimate Universe fan, I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
I That's crazy that you say that was
Oh,
10
I was
years
gonna
ago.
say that reminded me of Doctor Who though, because while I was watching it, I think the Doctor and Captain America are very similar. They're both using their head and they're both jumping out of windows when they can't see any other options. That's what it made me think of, because in that elevator scene, they're like, "You've got nowhere to go," and he just leaps out the window 100 stories up. And that's something that the Doctor has done before also. He just jumps out a window and he's like, "I'll figure this out."
John, that's got to be a rare original thought on planet Earth. Like there can't be anyone else who's ever thought Captain America was like Doctor Who.
I don't know. Because there was another scene that made me think of that. One, them jumping out of the things and just being like, if someone tells me I don't have anywhere to go, I'm gonna go the right. I think that is a similar trait. And then there's another scene that made me think of it. This is so dumb, Zach.
What are they running through a corridor?
No, they do run a lot. Captain America does. He can do it all day.
On your left.
Yeah. But it's when Captain America has the flash drive in the hospital, okay? And he has to go back to Shield and he sneaks it into the vending machine. Can you picture what's happening?
Kind of.
He sneaks it behind some gum, because in the scene they're talking and we can see someone's loading the vending machine right next to them. And here's the thing. Here's what he had to do there. He had to ask that guy, "Hey, I need you to put this in the he's got to sneak it to him, right? I need you to put this in the vending machine, because if he couldn't do it himself, the Shield guys would have seen him, obviously. And that's a Doctor Who thing to do, because he's just using a normal person and making a connection with him really fast and being like, "All right, you gotta help me out, man. It's for the greater good." And then the other guy just helps him out. Very Doctor Who thing to do. You're using your head and using, just being nice to get the job done.
That's funny. I thought about that movie the other day when I'm watching the first episode of The Boys, and Homelander shows up at Sister Sage's house in a baseball hat and street clothes. And it's so clearly Homelander. It doesn't look like anyone else, but you can tell he's trying to be incognito. And it's like when Captain America does that when he's on the run.
100%. My sister and I were laughing at that scene because him and Black Widow are walking around the mall, and the second they walk out of the Apple store, Captain America's standard tack team. There's two there. There's two there. There's two behind us. There's two over there, and it's Captain America had half a second and he just called out 8 people, and these guys can't notice a 6'4" guy and a beautiful woman walking right next to each other that they're looking for.
Who are literally Avengers. They're both so famous.
And then they're like, "Okay, let's kiss a little bit. It makes people uncomfortable. They won't look at us if we're kissing." And I told my sister, I'm like, I would notice if Captain America and Black Widow were making out in front of me, especially if I were looking for Captain America and Black Widow.
Yeah, for real. It's Crazy that you say that movie came out 10 years ago because I have such vivid memories. But it checks out because I was a senior in high school of going to the drive-in with my
Oh,
best
look at
friend,
you.
and it was a double feature of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy 1. And
That is
I can
awesome.
remember Captain America, the Winter Soldier ending and being like, that was the best movie I've ever seen. And my friend just being like, meh. And then Guardians coming on and him being like, that was awesome. And at this point, these are obscure characters. Like, I'm
Yeah.
a Marvel guy, but I don't know the Guardians of the Galaxy hardly at all. And I'm like, I didn't really get it. And he's like, that was a better movie than that Captain America thing. And I'm like, no way. And here we are now. They're both like
Bo-
revered in their own
both
way.
both of those are very top tier Marvel movies.
But
That it
isn't that
probably is just
crazy?
personal preference, but yeah.
Isn't that crazy to think about them being in the theater at the same time and like mattering this much 10 years later?
I know, dude. The like number of just banger movies that the MCU gave us in a short time frame will never be like repeatable ever again.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Because now, it takes them 5 years to make like one movie. We're not getting like Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Guardians of the Galaxy, Iron Man 2 all within a span of like 6 years. That's crazy.
Where the hell is Shang-Chi? If this was
Yeah.
2014, we would have seen this guy like
We
3 different times. It,
Shang-Chi was like 8 years ago and we've seen him one time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope they get their groove back before they start messing with Fantastic Four and
Bringing in the
X-Men.
X-Men. Well, hopefully they do. Maybe they'll start, pumping out movies again. We got
I
to get
don't
this machine rolling.
I don't see how it works. I think X-Men needs to be like Game of Thrones. It needs to be like the highest budget TV show, and you give us like weekly content instead of, a 2-hour movie every couple years.
Um, Speaking of X-Men, I have an X-Men question for you.
Okay.
And I know I can see we're about 22 and a half minutes in here, but we're just talking about all of my favorite stuff. So, you want to do the X-Men question now or at the end?
We can do it now cuz at the
Okay.
end I kind of want to talk about Justin
Okay.
Timberlake.
Great. I love it. Um, okay, so you've got the Juggernaut, okay? You put an adamantium chain around his stomach, okay? It's like 100 feet long. Then on the other end of that chain, right next to him, you've got Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Okay, the Juggernaut takes off running. What is going to happen, Zach, when that chain reaches the end of its, you know, pull 100 feet?
Okay, so
I'm not like asking about a right or wrong answer. I'm asking you as the X-Men expert on this podcast. You tell me what's going to happen.
okay, so here's the thing. Theoretically, so the thing you got to know about Juggernaut is he is not a mutant. His powers are magical. They come
That's
from
right. I was reading about that yesterday. That's why I didn't know that.
yeah. They come from the gem of Sidorak, and so they have no upper limit. It's just that he's like unkillable, and he can't like any momentum that he has can't be
Stop.
stopped. Yeah, so he's unstoppable and unkillable, and that's like a magic thing. That's not a
Okay.
mutant power, so it has no upper limit.
Okay.
And
But Thor's
Thor's
hammer
hammer
is
is
also
also
magic.
magical.
Okay.
So if it says like it's not a thing about strength. You can only lift it if you're worthy. And if we're assuming the Juggernaut is not worthy, because nowadays he's kind of actually heroic. He's about to be in the X-Men in the relaunch that comes out next
Well,
month.
he's like Xavier's brother, right? Isn't that like a
He's
throwaway line in Deadpool?
dude, that's like a big part of his characterization in the comics. Like he's his stepbrother. He's the brother Kane. You know, like it's very on the nose. His name's Kane Marco, and he's the brother that his own father married Xavier's mother for the money, but then liked Xavier better than him. So he was like the scorned son. He was the one that his own father didn't like as much as his wimpy little...
Xavier was probably like putting that in his head also. The little prick.
It's possible. I mean, he's a young telepath. Like, who knows what he's even controlling and what he's doing.
Yeah, he's probably like making his parents love him more just because without knowing it.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of drama, and for decades and decades, the Juggernaut would pretty much just show up whenever he's like pissed at Charles, and that was just his whole deal. And now he's kind of known as like a more of a standalone character because they don't do those stories as often. But
probably because in X3 they didn't. I mean, I would have never known that they were brothers from X-Men 3.
That's the problem.
They don't ever mention that in it at all.
Yeah, that's the problem with the Fox movies is everyone but Xavier, Magneto, and Wolverine are just cameo characters. They're not real people. So they just kind of get reduced down to like their powers and their name, and then you point and say, hey, that's them, and you don't know anything about them.
So is the line, I'm the Juggernaut, is that from the comics, or was that a movie original?
Apparently, it's like some early internet meme. I don't know about it, but I heard about it on the Cerebro podcast that like that was a reference to something that X-Men fans were already saying online as a joke.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. But I think in the hypothetical situation you made up, the adamantium chain would break. Because that's the only thing that's not like magic powered. Yeah. Okay. You can call it the strongest metal, but when it's being pulled between two things that literally cannot give or be stopped,
it will break.
You're going to find a way to break it.
I think that's the correct answer. I'll take that.
Yeah.
What if the Juggernaut wasn't magic? What if he's just a mutant? What if it's movie Juggernaut?
Well, then you get into the definition of an Omega level mutant, because there are mutants who it's in their power set that there is no upper limit, and there's only certain ones, and it's if he were a mutant and he were an Omega, I think his powers would work the same as they do right now. But if he were a mutant and he weren't an Omega, he would just be a strong guy.
A strong guy.
And
we've already got a mutant strong guy.
We do. Okay. We love Guido.
Yeah. Okay. That was great. I think we've done it. Should I take us out? Are we done?
I think so. Yep. That was a good episode.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hear it from the Better Business Bureau and then get into these issues finally.
Every business says they're better. But the ones that earn and display the BBB seal back it up. It instantly identifies businesses that are committed to operating with integrity, honoring promises, and telling the truth. Makes you wonder why every business doesn't have it. So look for it, because it's looking out for you. That's why it's the sign of a better business. And find a better business anytime at bbb.org.
All right, and we're back. Thanks for bearing with us, listeners. You know, we're just having fun over here.
Yep. Just having a good time. Talking shop.
Absolutely. So we're getting into issue 116 of Ultimate Spider-Man, written by Brian Michael Bendis, penciled by Stuart Immonen, inked by Wade Von Gronbadger, colored by Justin Ponzer, and lettered by VC's Corey Petit.
And we're finishing up the Death of a Goblin arc today.
Yep. And we open on Spider-Man and the Green Goblin both falling out of a skyscraper window to the street below. And
this also reminded me of Doctor Who and Captain America jumping out of windows.
John, I'm going to have a gripe here. We learned in the last episode that this is Trump Tower they're falling out of.
Okay, give us some architecture stuff.
More geography stuff. We see the Times Square billboards in the background of some of these shots. And Trump Tower is not near Times Square. I mean, they're both in Midtown, but they're like as far apart as you can get.
Donald
in Midtown.
Trump wishes, okay,
that he was on Times Square.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we got him. So Peter's out of his web fluid because, as we remember, Carol Danvers was messing around with his little shooters. And Kitty Pryde, who is at the top of the building, knows it too. She's like, oh my God, Peter doesn't have webs. She realized it pretty fast. And she pencil dives off of the building, trying to make her body as aerodynamic as possible to catch up with him. And it looks like Peter is going to land directly on a family of tourists. And Kitty reaches out her hands, and they come close to touching. It kind of looks like what's that one painting by Michelangelo? God and Adam. Yeah.
Yep. Zach, the painting, God is in like the shape of what looks like it could be a human brain. And, that's like it's not Michelangelo.
Who did it?
Leonardo da Vinci? Or isn't Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel?
One of
which is the painting of Adam. I think that's at the top of the Sistine Chapel, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Dude, this is your realm.
Is it?
You're Catholic.
Well, anyway, if you look at that painting, which I'm looking at now, God is in like a human brain, it looks like. And that's because that's Michelangelo being like, he's a creation of like the human brain,
Heresy.
I know. And he put that at the top of the biggest church in the world.
Wow.
What a beast.
True hater.
Dude, that is.
Put him up next to Kendrick Lamar on the Mount Rushmore of haters.
That's like one of the most like ultimate burns you can do.
It also, so this kind of looks like that painting, but it also, John, I can't help but notice that it feels like the scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he's trying to catch Gwen Stacy, which hasn't come out at this point, but retroactively, that's what it feels like to Spider-Man fans reading this.
The death of Gwen Stacy wasn't until like the 2000s. I thought that was like
I'm talking about the movie, the Andrew Garfield movie.
Okay.
That scene.
Yeah.
And then the callback to it in No Way Home.
Yep.
It also feels like a callback to Peter jumping for Mary Jane after she got thrown off the bridge.
That's true. And now that I think about it, this is probably something that's happened a lot in comics over the years. People falling, and then you have to go catch them.
But we get like 3 whole pages of them falling, and we just get more and more small panels of them like reaching out and trying to catch each other. They're building up the drama to it. And we see a massive fireball explosion as the Green Goblin hits the street. And Peter and Kitty phase through the street at the last possible moment and end up in the sewer below. And Peter's impressed that Kitty rescued him, but she tells him not to make a thing of it. And they phase back onto the street above where everything is chaotic and the Goblin is already gone. And S.H.I.E.L.D. agents surround them with their guns drawn, and Kitty says, "Dude, I'm phasing right now, so if you shoot us, you'll actually be shooting your pal behind me, and vice versa." Peter asks what we're all thinking. Weren't they just agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. like 2 seconds ago?
And they're already like pointing their guns at him.
They can't help themselves, John. And Carol Danvers arrives and tells the other agents to put their weapons down.
They're even yelling. Okay. I see what you're saying. Now that you just said that, I can see what she's saying. I thought they're like pointing their guns at Peter and Kitty, and they're like, "Weapons down, Osborn! Get on the ground!" It's like, you guys are idiots. He's gone.
So Carol Danvers arrives and tells the other agents to put their weapons down. And I said all cops and feds in this universe share one brain and have to take turns using it. And right now it's Carol's turn with the brain.
This is what I mean when I said Captain Giandewolf has been the best person in charge that we've seen throughout this run. She's still like the best, most moral person I think we've seen. She just works for Kingpin. But she does her job well.
Yeah.
She did her job well. Rest in peace.
Pour one out. And so Peter tries to climb high to look for Norman, but he's gone. Which, it's amazing that he just hit the street in Times Square, surrounded by SHIELD agents.
Just useless.
Apparently bounced up and out of there, and no one knows where he went.
I mean, just useless. Like, it's almost like, I don't know. It almost feels like a type of TV show or something where, like, if the camera isn't specifically on it, it's like nobody can see it, right? Like, if we aren't being drawn the panels, it's like nobody exists in that moment at all.
No object permanence here.
Yeah, because it's not possible for him to slam into the ground a big green goblin creature in the middle of all of these SHIELD agents and then
Explode.
just like and then just disappear and not have anybody know where he possibly like scattered off to.
In the most well-lit, busy intersection in America, where there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
You could not fabricate a situation where it would be harder to lose track of where the Green Goblin went.
And it almost happened last time he escaped also, because they're like fighting and then he falls in, and then in the very next panel, Norman Osborn's like naked, sneaking up behind SHIELD agents to steal a pair of clothes. And I mean, I respect it. I don't know how he's doing this. Maybe it's another power he has.
Dude, if this whole supervillain thing doesn't work out for him, he could be the next Houdini.
Yep.
He's got to get an act in Vegas.
Or Quick Change. Have you ever seen those guys?
Oh, yeah.
Incredible stuff.
So Peter tells Kitty, let's go, and she says, okay. And Carol tries to stop them, and Peter tells her off. He points out that she had his help, but she screwed him over multiple times and is to blame for all of this. And he says, we're going home. We have school in 4 hours. If I see Osborn, I promise, I'll wait for Nick Fury to get back to planet Earth and I'll call him instead. And Peter grabs...
I want to read something else that Peter says. So as he's like telling off Carol Danvers, he's saying like, you had my help and then you put me in jail and dangled me in front of Osborn like a carrot, and I still helped you. And then the second I turned my head, you lost the bad guy and you used up all my web fluid. So he's really telling her out. But then I wanted to specifically mention the thing he says about dangled me like a carrot in front of Osborn, because at the end of this scene, when he and Kitty swing away, we just see Carol and she's like looking up at them and she says, there's more carrots where that came from. So she like still wants to use them, or at least someone, in a trap like that. Like, She's a bad guy.
Well, you don't get to be the head of SHIELD by, being a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, as it were.
I mean, I guess, but can't our like good guys not be so villainous? Like, shouldn't they not be saying things under their breath as our hero swings away? Like, isn't that a very villainous thing to do when you like look at the hero and you're like, oh, get you, Peter Parker?
John, it's the Ultimate Universe. It's 2007. Get with the times. Yeah. Comics are edgy. Everything's a deconstruction of the hero.
That's true. I mean, Feds are bad guys now.
Yeah. Hey, what if the heroes actually were the monsters? Huh? I bet no one's told that story before. Wow. So Peter grabs Kitty, and this is funny. They just jump away into the night because he doesn't have web fluid, but he can still jump really high. And they climb up a building and start a delightful little conversation. And John, I don't know if you caught this. The first thing Kitty says to him is, "Well, Indiana Jones, you certainly haven't forgotten how to show a lady a good time."
Okay, that's because didn't they both like quote Indiana Jones on their first date or something?
It's a callback to their first date. I am going to cry like a baby.
You know, I think Peter might be regretting his choices a little bit because when she saves him and they're in the sewer, he's like, "Oh my God, you saved me. You've been kicking butt for me all night." And I'm like, "Peter Parker, don't you dare."
Wow, this girl I tossed away like garbage and didn't think about her feelings at all actually might be cool.
Although I will say, now that we have seen Kitty in action for like an issue and we haven't seen MJ for quite that long, I am hoping that Peter breaks up with Mary Jane and gets back together with Kitty.
This pod is brought to you by Short Attention Span. We love the last thing we saw.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got the original scene from their first date where she says, "Well, Indiana Jones, you certainly haven't forgotten how to show a lady a good time." And Peter says, "Yeah, you're something." And then she looks really cute at him and he says, "You're supposed to say, 'I'm something all right' until I get my $5,000 back. You're getting more than you bargained for." "No? Nothing?" And Kitty says, "Well, wow, you out-geeked me there." So it's almost like when she said this, when she referenced their first date, it feels to me like a test of if he was going to do that bit again and keep quoting the movie with her. And he doesn't. He just says cute. And hold on, I'm going to read the rest of this page because, this was my bread and butter. He says, "You came to my rescue." And she says, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "Very cool." She says, "Seriously, don't make a thing of it. What was I supposed to do? You looked so lame on TV." And Peter says, "I'm so sorry we ended the way we did." And Kitty says, "I know." And they go back and forth, and he's like, "You didn't deserve that." And she's like, "I know. Okay, enough. Stop talking about this, but thanks." And then Kitty asks about MJ and Aunt May. And she says, "We should get them somewhere safe." And Peter's like, "Yeah, I already did. I don't know where they are, but they're gone. They're safe." And Peter says, "Osborn, I'm so sick of this guy. I hate that this always involves me, and yet it always does." And Kitty says, "You got somewhere to sleep tonight?" And Peter goes, "I'll sleep at home." And she says, "You want to sleep over?" And he goes, "Yeah, no." And she says, "MJ isn't that cool." And he says, "No one is." And Kitty asks, she'd rather you get pounced on in your sleep by Osborn.
Kitty's, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this, Zach.
Well, the next
Is Kitty
panel...
trying to spit some game here, or is she actually thinking about him? I think she's trying to spit some game.
I think she's just playing with him.
I don't think so.
Well, okay, so it's funny. She says she'd rather you get pounced on in your sleep by Osborn. Like, as if Kitty were to pounce on him in his sleep, it would be a different connotation. It'd be a different pouncing.
Exactly. That's a
double entendre.
That's a strange word that she used there.
And Peter says, "Let's not pull at this string. The entire sweater of my life will unravel." And Kitty abruptly says, "I'm thinking about dating Kenny."
Okay, that's why she's definitely trying to spit some game on Peter, because she...
You think she's trying to make him jealous?
No, I don't, but I think she's trying to, like, just make him think, like, oh, she didn't mean anything of it. Like, you know how people might do that sometimes. They might be like, "Oh, do you want to go out on a date?" "No." "Okay, well, I didn't. That's cool. I didn't really like you that way anyways, right?" She's like, "You want to come and sleep over?" MJ's not that cool. She won't let you sleep over. Okay, well, I'm thinking of dating Kenny anyways.
No, we already knew she was thinking of dating Kenny.
I mean, we did, but it doesn't mean she's not still into, the heartthrob that is Peter Parker.
That's fair. I'll give you that. But I think in this moment, she's more just being a good friend and having a conversation with him. And you know what, John? It feels so good to see them on good terms again. I'll take it.
I wish they
Even
were
if,
dating.
if there's a little bit of flirtation there, it's whatever. I don't think it's inappropriate. I think they're just being friends.
Me too.
And Peter asks Kenny from school, and she's like, yeah. And she asks Peter about him. She's like, what's his deal? And Peter says he's a good dude. He just hasn't come into his own. And sometimes he lets Flash boss him around. And Peter gets home that night and changes out of his costume. He spots a hippie flower van parked outside of his house. And he's like, seriously? And he grabs some drinks and snacks out of his fridge, walks up to it, knocks on the back door, and some S.H.I.E.L.D. surveillance agents open up. And he offers them snacks, and they accept them. And one of them says they're actually big fans of his, and the other one tells him that's unprofessional. And he hams it up with them a little bit about how they like working for S.H.I.E.L.D., and they show off some of the cool stuff the van can do. And he tells them if they need to use the bathroom or anything to just knock, and he goes back inside. I thought that was so funny. It's just a window into how bad S.H.I.E.L.D. is, that he immediately spotted their car and just starts chatting with these guys who are supposed to be secretly surveilling him.
They're in the most like ostentatious van in the world, parked right in front of his house. I don't know. I guess for a second I was also like, oh, S.H.I.E.L.D. is just so stupid. Like, but then I don't think that they're there to spy on him. They're just there to make sure if Osborn shows up, they see him. Right?
Which so they're also pretty bad at.
Which they are also pretty bad at. But I guess it's not necessarily a bad thing that Peter like looks out his window and sees them, because they're not trying to hide from him, you know.
Well, sure.
So they're not that useless.
If they're easily spotted by the 15-year-old, then they're easily spotted by the supervillain CEO.
I think Norman Osborn would also notice that truck, and yeah.
So he goes back inside and he listens to some voicemails in the kitchen from MJ and Aunt May, who are worried about him, but say that they're safe. They're like in New Jersey or something. And his spidey senses go off. So he walks into the living room to find a human Norman Osborn sitting on his couch. And Peter tells him they're agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right outside.
And he's sitting on the couch wearing a bedsheet that's made to look like a toga. And it made me wonder, surely they have given us... Gosh, I'm sorry. Sorry, listeners. I know you've heard me cough a couple times. Surely they've given us some sort of references to him and like Caesar or the Roman Empire in the past.
Well,
is there anything you can think of?
The very first line of the very first issue doesn't focus on Peter. It's Norman Osborn in his lab talking about the Greek goddess Arachne or something that's like a spider.
Interesting. Okay. So I just figured it's such a choice here to put him in like a toga that will immediately make people think of, I think, like Caesar or the Roman Empire. And they don't really ever explain it. So I don't know.
I think at face value, it's that he turns naked when he goes human, and he was just in Peter's house and he grabbed the first thing he saw. But it is also definitely a choice that he didn't steal clothes again, and that instead he's looking very imperial here.
Yeah.
I think him and what's his name? Roman Augustus should hang out sometime.
Yeah.
And so Peter tells him about the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and Norman dares him to go get them, saying he'll just kill them if they try to come inside. And Peter asks Norman what he wants, and Norman says he wants his old life back. He wants his money, he wants his son, and he'll gladly destroy Nick Fury and whoever else he needs to get it. And Peter says, well, Mr. Bad Timing as usual, Nick Fury ain't around anymore. Hence the fact that he hasn't disintegrated you. And John, I was wondering if you'd be game for a little dramatic reading for page 16. Do you
gosh.
do you have a Willem Dafoe voice? If not, I can try it.
Don't you know how much I sacrificed?
Holy shit, he's in the room with us right now.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe, come on in. Here, you want to take over this
Oh
page?
my god, ladies and gentlemen, give it up. Round of applause. Has he been like Oscar winner or Emmy nominated or anything like that? He should be.
I think he did win the Oscar for most goblin-like face.
Ladies and gentlemen, Oscar winner Willem Dafoe is on the pod. All right.
Hello!
Mr. Dafoe, you are going to be Green Goblin on this page, and I will be Peter Parker.
Okay, are we doing the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Boy! Oh god, this is gonna get old for all the listeners. Sorry. You are the only proof left on the entire planet of Earth that I'm a genius. You're my legacy. You're my proof that I belong in the world.
I was an accident.
So was penicillin.
I like the calm Willem Dafoe voice too. You did that well.
Thanks.
I think that's the funnier one, is when he's just Godspeed, Spider-Man. You
every now and again someone gives you a choice, Spider-Man. Save the bus of children or Mary Jane.
I love that. I love Willem Dafoe. I hope he never has a bad day or dies. Okay, so you said so was penicillin. You created you. That's what you created. What you did to Harry?
Yes, but I'm a monster. You're a hero. You're my greatest work. You're what I'll be remembered for.
And?
I feel at this point now that I've done my part. I've buried Fury in the press. If you, the hero of New York, step forward and tell the world that I created you, if the world sees that I created you and that I've given the chance I could create more, all else is forgiven.
You're a murderer!
Oh, I love getting to read some Nazi sympathizer talk here. Okay. After World War II, this country gladly took in Nazi scientist after Nazi scientist who did things 50,000 times worse than I could ever imagine.
Including destroying your own son.
I was trying to protect him!
Yeah? Good job. Listen, Slappy, I'm not gonna help you. You're so crazy that crazy isn't even a sufficient word to describe it. I think we need to invent a new word. Just for you.
I have nothing to lose, Peter. You do.
Stop it.
You have so much to lose.
See, that's the kind of talk that bums everyone out about you, Sunshine. And you're so threatening in a toga.
I'm not threatening you.
And I'm not scared of you. Just then, there's a knock at the door. And both Peter and Norman look at it like, what the f*** was that? And a note slides under the front door, and Peter picks it up. Norman asks what it is, and Peter tells him, it says turn on CNN.
Okay, so is this from the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents?
I would assume so.
They are just terrible at their job.
Well, no, because I think as what we're going to see on CNN was orchestrated by S.H.I.E.L.D. So they're following orders.
Okay. And they know that Norman's in the house.
Huh, yeah, I guess so. I didn't realize that until just now, but I guess he didn't sneak in by them.
Well,
I guess they knew he was in there.
Danvers insinuates that they knew he was in there in the next issue. But I guess this does, him getting this note from the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, that does make a bit more sense. That they definitely knew that he was in the house.
Jesus Christ, Peter gave these guys snacks.
Dude, they're
and
so bad.
Chopped it up with them, and they're fans of his.
They're
and they
still
didn't
using
give
him as bait. I know.
They're like, hey, that kid is so nice. All right, let's see if he dies now when he walks into this door.
Hopefully Norman wants to have a chat with him and watch the news and not just immediately start fighting.
So he turns on the TV to see Harry Osborn, surrounded by Carol Danvers and other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, giving a press conference, calling Norman a liar and saying he killed my mommy. He calls her mommy multiple times.
Dude, it's so weird. I know. It's so interesting. I like both times I read it and he calls her mommy. I'm like, he's a little old for that, but she did die. He might have some emotional, or I mean, he probably does have some emotional trauma that's going on here, but
he's been through a lot, so we're gonna give him a mulligan on the first one. But then he says it again, and we're like,
second one,
dude, you're 16 years old. Come on.
Weird.
And the issue ends with a panel of Norman's eye flaming, juxtaposed by Carol Danvers looking at the camera over her sunglasses.
Yeah, and she has like a sinister look. She's like consoling Harry, but it's like you've seen in movies or TV shows a million times where it's like someone's consoling them, but you can tell they are having their own ulterior motives here. Like the way she's like looking at the camera, you can tell she doesn't give a shit about Harry.
Also, it's nighttime. She's wearing sunglasses. All of the agents around her are wearing sunglasses and suits. Who do they think they are?
And you wonder why they can't fucking see anything that happens in front of their faces. Like,
oh my God, where'd he go? I don't know. I'm in sunglasses at night. Let me see. John, I gave this 8.5 out of 10 cool gadgets in the obvious surveillance van.
I love it. I think it's a great rating. This was a good issue.
It was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. Yep. And I will also give it an 8.5. I'm not sure about cool ratings in the surveillance van. Or cool gadgets. And I didn't notice any cool gadgets in the there were a couple. Didn't he say like one turns them invisible or turns the van black or something?
And they say it can also fly.
Yeah. And didn't he like hold something up and show Peter? And he was like, this thing does this. I don't know.
Sonic screwdriver.
Okay. 8.5 cool gadgets. That's fine. Yeah.
See, the problem with S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't their tech. It's user error. Yeah,
it's definitely. Where are the Ultimates? I don't know. Didn't we still see them like jetpacking in? Are we supposed to maybe believe that was just in like Norman Osborn's head, what he was thinking was happening? Right now, as we speak, Fury's goons are flying in to stop us, and then we get a shot of the Ultimates coming in. Are we just supposed to believe that was not really them?
I so badly want a bottle issue where like New York is on fire and we just see like Captain America in New Jersey picking up Carol Danvers dry cleaning and Tony Stark on a beach in Maui with like a bunch of hot babes, and they're all just
awesome.
Goofing off, because that would at least make some sense.
That reminds me, I was golfing with the now ex-gym teacher yesterday because he retired, and we were just like laughing because we were kind of talking about how little any of us we follow the news. Like I would never know what has happened in the world until somebody tells me that something's happened. I don't know about it. Like you mentioned something with Justin Timberlake. The only reason I even know what you're going to say is because my sister told me about it when we were watching The Winter Soldier like 2 days ago. But he goes, the world's at nuclear war and Opat and Bueller are still out on the golf course. And it's like, yeah, because we'd have no idea until we like got off. We just have no idea that anything happened. That's how the Ultimates are. They're just like going about their day. Unless something happens directly in front of them, they just have, Tony Stark has no idea that something's going on.
My favorite example of one of those things is, I don't know if we've talked about this, but you know how Jared Leto found out about COVID?
No.
I mean, he's a weird guy, right?
Yes.
He went on like some kind of spiritual retreat on a mountain in like California where he was unplugged for like 2 or 3 weeks.
I hate rich people.
he comes down from the mountain, and it's like the first episode of Walking Dead. Like everyone's doors are closed, roads are closed, stores are empty, things are boarded up. He's like, "What the hell happened here?" And people are like, "Jared Leto, why aren't you wearing your mask?" And he's like, "What mask?" He had no idea.
Jared Leto, you have to put your mask on.
He hadn't heard of COVID.
Zach, I just want to take a moment to mention that you just naturally said one of my sister and I's favorite lines from Avengers Endgame, completely organically.
What the hell is happening here?
And it is when Scott gets back into the future and he looks at the kid and there's like trash all around the street for some reason, even though it's been like 5 years. And he just looks around and he looks at the kid and he goes, "What the hell happened here?" And the kid just bikes away. I love that line.
Yeah. This was the real life version of that, and the funniest thing was like the same way that Scott Lang is maybe the dumbest Avenger.
Definitely.
Jared Leto it's funny when something couldn't have happened to a better person for it to happen to. Jared Leto is absolutely the person. It's like either him or Aaron Rodgers that I would expect to be on some bullshit retreat on a mountain and miss the biggest story in the world.
As soon as you mentioned like the retreat, I literally thought of Aaron Rodgers. And I think the best part about that happening to Jared Leto is I am certain before Jared Leto found out what happened, there is at least a part of him that thought he was responsible for all of this. By taking his break and it coming back, I'm certain he was like, "What did I do that made all of this happen?"
Insert the Breaking Bad scene where he's like, no, all of this, it's all about me.
Yes.
I am certain you're right. I have no doubt in my head Jared Leto thinks the world is just his little amusement park.
Definitely. All right, are we going into 117?
Let's do it.
The final thing of Death of a Goblin. And we are getting I said I wanted some questions about Harry. That was one of the things I wanted in this arc. And I wanted something to happen with MJ's goblin creature. That was the other thing I wanted to happen before this arc ended. So, Peter wakes up on the ground, grabbing his head in his house. Is that their house? Is that the new Parker residence?
It is.
Yeah. And Aunt May is just staying with a friend today. Not Miles Warren? Or is she staying? Yeah, but not Miles.
How funny would it be if she was like, "I'm going to my boyfriend's house to be away from the Green Goblin."
I know,
and then,
it's Miles Warren.
Yeah, it's the Green Goblin psychiatrist.
So Peter wakes up on the ground and he's like, "Oh my gosh, what the hell happened here?" And we get a brief flashback to Harry's speech on the TV. And as Harry is talking, Norman goblins out and throws a big punch at Peter's head before escaping out the house and blowing up another one of the Parker's residences. And I feel pretty bad for them. This is like a lot of houses in a row, it seems like Norman Osborn has destroyed.
The funny thing is, like, he seems to do it strictly out of spite. Like, he can
walk out of the house.
He goes through the door, and he fits through the doorway, but he extends his arms out like he's Naruto running, just so he can break some of the wood and the columns, the wood columns holding up the porch
and we also see like smoke coming out of like where his arms are. So it's like he's like exploding as he's like just walking out of the house. Yeah, he's not a good guy. So Peter gets up and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's what happened." And he begins to swing after him. At the Triskelion, S.H.I.E.L.D. is gearing up for a full-scale attack on Osborn. And Carol Danvers tells Harry that he did a great job. And he's like, "Man, I can't believe I was just on the news in front of the whole country." And Danvers is like, no, you weren't. We only broadcasted that to the one TV we knew Osborn was watching. So this is where we know that they knew Osborn was already in the house, and the agents knew Osborn was in the house. That's why they said to watch CNN. And we also know now...
How funny would it be if they were like... if they had been in like Peter's room and they're watching on a different TV and
they don't hear the knock at the door.
It's the wrong, yeah. It's the wrong TV in the house.
They were like watching Fox instead of CNN.
Or if the agents did that, they like broadcast to the TV in Aunt May's room and the living room TV is wrong.
And so they did this so Norman will go after Harry. And we can now also learn that this is the other carrot and stick that Carol Danvers was talking about. Well, kind of both, right? Because they sort of used Peter as a trap because they know Osborn's at his house and they're still just letting him like sit there and talk to Peter. But then they're also using Harry as a trap. So like, dude, it's too many teenagers being used as a trap. I think I found our rating system for this episode. Out of how many teenagers did we use for a trap to lure Norman Osborn in?
That's perfect. And I also got to point out the Triskelion. Remember how like...
it was like broken, wasn't it?
like hours ago there was a flaming crater in the center of it. And now there's
maybe that's on the other side of it. Maybe we're seeing the side that is still standing up.
These cranes and trellises they put up to do work on it were already on the good side. It looks like they've had months of repair work going on.
It's fully repaired. It just shows how quickly the government can act when they want to. So Carol Danvers, Harry asks why they're luring Osborn to the Triskelion. And Carol Danvers cocks her big gun like a cool person and says, because this is where we have the best guns. And all of a sudden, the Goblin appears above them, jumping down as S.H.I.E.L.D. starts blasting. And Osborn jumps down, and every time he and...
hold on, you buried the lead here.
Okay, what is it?
He's in Goblin form, right? We've seen him naked in Goblin form before. He's still wearing the toga.
This is why he put the toga on.
It's a loincloth to apparently hide his fat goblin hog that we would otherwise be seeing, even though it didn't appear any of the other times he's been butt-ass naked as a goblin.
But it would have in this shot that he's in now.
Exactly. They're so inconsistent about what happens to people's genitals when they turn into goblins.
Yeah, okay. Brian Michael Bendis, can you give us some consistently on goblin genitalia, please?
If this was The Boys, we would have gotten this answer like episode 1.
We would have. We would have had a huge swinging goblin hog on panel number 1 of page number 1. Okay, so whenever Norman talks as a goblin, I envision it as like a hissing voice. Have you ever seen... do you watch Rick and Morty?
Of course.
Okay, do you know the episode where there's like the Knight family? And the Knight family kind of like talks in like this dumb hissing voice.
Yeah.
That is how I read when Norman and, in a couple scenes, Harry as a goblin are talking to each other.
I think that's what I've always heard too.
Because we get some extra S's on all of their words. And
yeah.
Okay. So Norman Osborn begins hissing at them and he says, "Can I have a word with my son?" And Harry goblins out into his red goblin form and the two begin a big goblin fight. And they're doing goblin voices at each other, and Norman is like, "This is the thanks I get," and Harry's like, "Stop it." And as Norman is beating up on his son, he tells him,
Dude, how up would it be if they were talking like that the whole time, and then one of them just slipped and said something like a normal person, and you realize this was a choice that they were making.
Yeah. And Norman is telling him he's disappointed in him, and Peter flies in and jumps on Norman's back and begins to choke him out. And Peter thinks he has the upper hand, but then Norman does that thing we've seen before where he like makes his back catch on fire, and it causes Peter to have to jump off. So Norman and Harry are still fighting, and Danvers has been pretty reserved here as a police officer. You know, she's like, hold your fire. We don't have a clean shot. Blah, blah, blah. Well, she's done at this point. She's like, I'm over it. You know, Harry and Norman are fighting. She's like, to hell with this. Start blasting. Shoot them. Shoot everybody. And so they all start shooting, and everybody gets hit. You know, Spider-Man's getting blasted. Harry's getting blasted. Peter's got a torn up mask, and
they shoot Norman into like 3 fighter jets that explode, and I'm just looking at it like, all right, there goes $10 billion in taxpayer money. That's cool.
It's all fake, you know. There will always be money for more fighter jets.
That's true.
Like, let's not get worried about the lack of fighter jets S.H.I.E.L.D. has.
True.
So Peter goes to help Harry because Norman, like Zach said, he got exploded into, you know, a bunch of jets a little bit further away. Peter goes to help Harry.
And as we know, jet fuel can't melt Goblin skin.
That's true. And Harry's like, hey, Peter. And Peter's like, are you okay? And he goes, not really. And Norman Goblin continues to go towards Harry and the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and Norman
Goblin. You said that earlier this episode, and it cracked me up. There's a thing in like punk rock where no one knows anyone's last names. So like you have a moniker as like a last name. So like there's a guy in the Indianapolis scene whose name is Tucker, who is like the hardest mosher in the state. And people just call him Tucker Mosh. And there's a guy in Philly who books shows, and he's just Joe Hardcore. And then there's like a singer for Mind Force. That's Jay Mind Force. You know, it's like...
That's awesome.
This would be Norman Goblin, you know?
Yeah.
First name and then what you know them from.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny because in my notes I actually say Norman's Goblin, but I guess I've just been like skipping that apostrophe S when I've been reading it.
No, that. From now on the pod, he's Norman Goblin.
It's Norman Goblin and Harry Goblin. So Norman Goblin continues to go towards Harry Goblin, and the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and Danvers order everyone to fire again at Norman, but he seems to absorb all of that energy and sends a big fireball back at the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And now we get Danvers yelling at everyone to retreat. And Peter and Norman continue their big punch up, and Peter swinging around. And I will say I don't really like this tirade that Peter goes on. He kind of like goes on just a big thing about how crazy Norman is. And now he's like the mayor of Crazy Town, and he's so crazy, and he's the craziest person that's ever existed. And we've just heard it so many times from Peter to Norman or about Norman. I feel like Peter is more clever than to be like, why is he saying the same stuff over and over again? Like, and surely he knows enough about Norman to know, like, Norman does have reasons for the things he's doing, you know.
And he doesn't care about this. You're not hurting his feelings calling him crazy.
Yeah. And maybe back in like the issue, like 50 issues ago, where Norman's like the circles and the whatever, and he's not making any sense, then he's crazy. But I don't know. I'm like over Peter doing this.
This is this was maybe my breaking point where for years I've defended Bendis and people were like, I hate the Bendis voice, and he writes everyone the same and he uses the same dialogue over and over again. And I'm like, I don't know, I think he's a pretty good writer. This was like the first time where I was reading it and I was like, yeah, okay, it's a little tiresome now. But that's also because I've been watching Buffy and Josh Whedon does the exact same. And so it's like I'm seeing it in Ultimate Spider-Man, I'm seeing it in Buffy. I'm realizing maybe we were oversaturated with that kind of like banter, in the 2000s.
Well, I don't have a problem with the banter. I just would like to see more banter. He's saying the same things, right? How many times have we heard him call Osborn crazy at this point?
It's the way that he finds 50 different analogies for being crazy in a single conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So minus one kid whose shield used for a trap. Harry jumps in wanting to stop his dad in this fight with Spider-Man. And he says, "You have to stop." But Norman easily grabs him by the throat and says, "I'm still your father, Harold." And I think this would be so funny to see, like, to watch happen. Just these, like, big giant goblin creatures, like, I don't know, talking in their boring, like, snake voices. Being like, "Dad, please."
This isn't supposed to be a funny scene.
No, it's not. I thought that part was funny, but
we're just in a silly mood, listeners. But
I'm in a very silly mood.
Let me be clear. This is a pretty tense moment.
Yep.
Gloves are off.
So Norman Goblin grabs Harry Goblin easily by the throat and says, "I'm still your father, Harold, and this is how you thank me for giving you everything I am. This is how you honor." Headphones check.
There's no way that's not that audio file isn't getting destroyed when it tries to compress it.
Oh, darn it. Okay, here, I'll back up. "This is how you honor me." And Norman begins beating Harry into the ground, and we get these panels of him like beating Harry into the ground with Harry's arm like raised up, trying to stop it. And as he gets punched a couple times, we see his goblin arm turn into a human arm as Norman continues to beat him to death. And he does beat him to death.
You see the sound effects when he's hitting a goblin body. It's going boom, 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 and then all of a sudden you see a human hand reaching up and he punches down and you just hear crunch. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not good. As someone who gets hurt a lot, John, and has a human body...
Crunches are bad.
Crunch is a bad sound. I'm still trying to deal with the blowback from my latest crunch I heard.
And so Norman, as the goblin, looks down on the ground, looks down at his now very bloodied and dead son. And we can see a small... Yeah, what's up, Zach?
Who's also, unfortunately, had a nude teenage transformation.
Ugh. Okay, do it. Do the voice. Do the thing.
Ka-chow! Nude teenage transformation!
Oh, man, this is sad that Harry's dead. I feel like it happened quickly and kind of out of nowhere enough that I don't care that much about it,
Oh, I thought you were going to say the opposite. I thought you were going to say it had like shock effect.
No, it's more like, I don't know. I feel like Harry's death is kind of just being used as a character moment for Norman, and he doesn't really get his own death here.
Yeah. Well, that's the shame of Harry in this whole series is we didn't really get to see him be like a friend and a classmate and everything. I mean, he's been gone way more than he's been present.
It also just doesn't feel like he's dead. Is he really dead? That's how they're gonna do this? Norman beats his own son to death?
Yeah, I mean, I can say it. You're right. This is a character moment for Norman. Harry doesn't matter that much in this story. He is dead.
Oh, God's perfect idiot. Darn it.
It's a shame. He's somewhere happy now.
It is a shame. I did like Harry.
He's with his mommy.
I was thinking maybe he wasn't actually going to be dead, but I guess the thing is called Death of a Goblin, and this is the death of the Goblin that I think we are actually getting here. But maybe not, because Norman stands up. He's still in Goblin form. He sees what he's done to Harry. We see kind of a small look of humanity in him before Carol Danvers runs up and says what everyone's thinking is like, you killed your son. And Norman changes back into human form, and he's, they're all standing in the rain. This is very what's that movie? Tears. We're all just tears in the what's the movie? Blade Runner? Is that it? He does the speech in the end when they've got rain going
I
all
haven't
over them.
seen any of those movies.
Some listener is like freaking out right now because they know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm not describing it. It might not be. It is Blade Runner. Zach? Okay.
I wasn't doubting you. I just don't know Blade Runner.
Okay, anyway, this reminded me of my favorite movie of all time that I love so much, Blade Runner. And anyway, Norman's standing there, he says, kill me, please. And Carol Danvers says, gladly, and blasts him. And Peter is climbing up. Peter kind of got thrown off the boat when they were fighting, and he's climbing up right in time to see this happen, to see like Norman kind of, it looks like he took a shot pretty point blank to the head, and he has like steam coming out of his head as he falls over onto the ground. And Harry runs into the middle and begins to cradle Harry's body.
You mean Peter runs in?
Yep, sorry. Peter, yeah. And Danvers says to him, I'm truly sorry. And Peter jumps up and grabs her armor by the throat of it and says, my friend is dead. You have a cure for Oz now. Why didn't you just cure him? And Danvers says that they tried and it didn't work. And Peter looks at her and says, you stay away from me. You get it? You're not Fury. I don't know you. From here on out, stay the hell away from me. Before also walking away in the rain. And Danvers just looks at him and under her breath says, yeah. Which, once again, she's just like doing villainous stuff as she watches the hero walk away.
I read it as, yeah, that didn't go well, did it? Maybe I should stay away, but you're probably right. She's not just gonna let it be, you know.
No, I don't think she is. Exactly.
She's got a world to run. If it involves bugging Spider-Man again, she's gonna bug Spider-Man.
Yeah. And this is all her fault. She did use Harry as a trap after she used Spider-Man as a trap, and she is worse than Fury. I mean,
this is why women just can't lead, John. They're too emotional.
It's incredible. I'm glad you said something, Zach, so I didn't have to. But it is incredible that we can spend 110 issues talking about how incompetent Nick Fury is, and he can get replaced by someone who is more incompetent.
I don't know if more is the right word, but again, it's short attention span. You know, we hate the S.H.I.E.L.D. director that we've seen the most recently.
Yeah. Get Captain America to run it. He's got a good moral head on his shoulders.
Dude, at this point, I'd trust Peter to run it.
Yeah, definitely. I would trust Magneto to run it.
Put Kong in the big chair.
Yeah. Okay. Any man. Can we say that? Um, so the next day at school, the teacher is asking the class how their baby project is going. When Peter stands up and he says, can I say something to the class? And Peter says that he was told Harry Osborn died this morning. And although they don't talk about Harry and everything that that has happened at school, he was still their classmate and they've known him since kindergarten. And he asks if the class can just talk about Harry for a couple of minutes. And we see the teacher say, yeah. And as Peter is like saying this, we can see Mary Jane and Liz Allen kind of begin to cry to themselves in class. And Peter says,
because they're women.
God damn it, Zach. Well, I cried during the scene, and then when I reread it to take notes on it, I definitely cried again during it. So I'm a woman too. I guess only women can be emotional. So Peter says he'll start talking, and as he begins to speak, we see MJ and Liz like begin consoling each other. They were like crying individually at their desks, and now Liz has kind of gone over and MJ's like consoling her. Did she date Harry? Is that what I think they were dating at the start of this run, weren't they?
Liz?
Yeah. Why is she the other person that they're choosing to show crying in this class?
That's a good question. Again, it goes back to Harry is more of an idea than a fleshed out character. You know, they have spent more time with him off panel than we have spent with him on panel. So I don't remember him and Liz having a particularly close relationship, but maybe that's just being established now. It also looks like Kong in the back is he's not crying, but his face is very darkened. He's like looking down, you know, he's shadowed.
Yeah.
I think he's having a pretty strong reaction to this too. Flash doesn't have a thought in his head, and Kitty doesn't know this guy.
Am I remembering this before I get into what Peter says? Am I remembering this correctly? That wasn't Harry kind of villainous in this run, like for a story arc or two,
Yeah.
where like he and MJ had dated in the past, and Harry has decided he's like anti-Peter now for some reason. How did that wrap up? Oh, that wrapped up with him stabbing his dad, right?
No, he stabbed his dad before that. He stabbed his dad in the Return of the Goblin arc, okay? And then he went away into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, and they were like trying to deprogram him, and it didn't work. And that's when he came back, and he still had like the hypnosis from Miles Warren, and did the cellar door thing, found his dad's little area with like goblin research, and took up the mantle, and was crazy, and was like going after Peter. And I think, and in between those was when we did Ultimate 6, and so he saw Peter at the White House lawn, and he said, "I'll kill you." And then he's been gone pretty much since then.
So how did that end? Obviously, he didn't kill Peter. They're happy with each other? Or, like...
He's been in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. He just is gone for long stretches of the run, where he's, like, on some farm upstate being run by S.H.I.E.L.D. or something.
Dude, that is up, man. Just, like, put him back in society somehow.
He doesn't get a fair shake in this. He's a very tragic character.
Yeah. Okay, so Harry begins to speak, and I'm just gonna read it. So he says, "Okay, well, I guess I can start. Not too long ago, I could not walk the halls of this school without someone, Flash, trying to give me an atomic super wedgie. And the only one in the world, really, who stood up for me was Harry. And it might not seem like that big a deal to you, but I thought about what kind of a guy does that. Who stands up for someone who can't defend themselves? And that's a hero, right? I mean, that's exactly what a hero is. And we lost one today. That's all I'm thinking about now. I kind of did that last bubble wrong. That's all I'm thinking about now. But still, it was a pretty good one. The whole thing, like I said, it made me cry. It's sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
And we get shots of MJ and Liz crying also. It's pretty well written, well drawn. I guess they for an arc that has not done right by Harry for 117 issues, they at least give him a good send-off speech.
Yeah. This issue is nothing if not memorable. Before we started this project and I thought back about this series and about Harry's role in it, it's always hard to pin down what he's doing or what he's there for. He's kind of just exists as a plot device and as a foil to his father. And the one thing that I always really remembered was how devastating and tragic his death is. And then how Peter kind of memorializes him, as retroactively having been one of the good ones. And we didn't see that journey, but that's how we're supposed to remember him.
But we also don't see the first 15 years of these kids' lives. If they've known each other since they were 5 years old up until Peter got his powers at 15 or 16, then they were like really good friends for 10 years before all this with the Green Goblin started happening.
Yeah. It's almost fitting that Harry's role in this story so far has been just based on his relationship to other people like Peter and his father, and that's where his story ends and that's how we remember him. But, we're putting him to rest on a positive note. He's a hero, so says Spider-Man.
Okay, so I think that's the death of the Goblin that we got. I don't think Green Goblin is dead, even though we did see him get blasted. I just don't think he's going to be dead. Is he dead, Zach?
I hate to spoil things for you because that's part of the fun of this podcast is I know what's coming and this is your first read. But you're smart. You have good media literacy skills. We're not ending the issue talking about the threat of Norman Osborn is gone forever.
Yeah. If we don't see him get put in the ground, I'm thinking he's still going to come back.
Yeah.
But, you would think, I had this thought, S.H.I.E.L.D. needs to, I get that, like, they want to just study these things. They're like, okay, he's incapacitated. Let's lock him up and study him. But they need to separate his head from his body and, like, kill him because it's not working. I mean, how many times can they study him before they're like, we just have to kill him? We have to find a way to end his life. Like, nothing else is working.
Surely they have the resources to blast him off into space and study him in space using, like, remote-controlled machines so no one else has to go up there.
I mean, I still think you're even if that happens, you're just buying time for the Goblin in space story arc, right? Like, eventually he's coming back.
Yeah, such is the way of comics.
Yep, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, so next issue, we get a big teaser on the next page.
Yeah, we get like a little skater punk here.
Are you talking about Iceman with his do-rag?
Is that Iceman from X-Men?
Yeah. So it says awesome. Spider-Man and his amazing friends. And we've got Firestar and we've got Iceman and we've got Spider-Man. Do you know what that's referencing? There was a cartoon in the early 80s called Spider-Man and his amazing friends. And it was this cast. It was Spider-Man, Firestar, and Iceman all living together.
Really?
In it, like an apartment with a dog.
Oh, that is awesome. That's going to be great.
And then in the Spider-Verse event, Morlun, that vampire guy that we've seen briefly. I don't know if you remember him. He kills them all, and he's like, "Wow, they taste so good because their spirits are pure and they're just so innocent."
Weird.
Because they were from a children's TV show.
Weird stuff. Okay, how many out of 10 16-year-olds being used as bait by S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Dude, I had a different, I think I enjoyed the first issue more, but weirdly enough, this is one of the more memorable issues in the whole run to me. So I'm going to give it the same score, but for a different reason. This is 8.5 out of 10 teenagers used as bait.
I think I'll go with that same score on both. Or maybe I would give it like an 8 out of 10. I think it probably was just a little less fun, you know.
Definitely less fun, but it's
just using
consequential.
fun as a term for, enjoying reading it. That's
Yes.
But it's still good. Still a great one. 8 to 9 kids in a trap.
The scene of Norman Goblin just punching the life out of his son, Harry Goblin, and each hit looks so brutal and hard, and then eventually the arm just becomes human and you hear a crunch and he's dead. That sticks with you, you know?
Yeah, it's messed up.
It is. I'm starting to think this Norman Goblin fellow is not a good guy.
Well, that's his wife and his son.
Yeah.
And how many Parker residences?
Where was he on the Mount Rushmore of pieces of work?
He was I think he was number 1. It was him. It was, I don't remember who it was.
Him, Gillette.
Did we take Gillette off?
No, dude, Gillette's got to be on there. He's a fixture. I think it was him, Gillette, Hank Pym, and Octavius.
Doc was maybe on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I stand by that list.
Those are good father figures to live up to. All right. That's it.
Cool.
What else do we got? I know we've still got to talk about the boys a little bit. We talked fully about Doctor Who earlier.
We got to talk about Justin Timberlake.
Okay, yeah. Here, before we do that, I do want to say something quick about the boys, because we won't be able to talk about it that much, because you've only watched the first episode, right?
Yes.
So, I think the way they do those, I don't really like that they release 2 or 3 episodes to start in the first week, because this is now 2 years in a row where they've done that, where I feel like those first episodes, they all are kind of leading up to where you actually have a very solid hour of television where there's no extra wasted time, right? It's almost like those first 3, they release them all at once because they're getting people primed. And then oh, okay, episode 4 is going to be a banger, because now they've set up all this stuff. They've given people a week to marinate on it now. And that's exactly what happened. Episode 4 was such a banger, Zach. I'm so sorry you haven't seen it yet. I want to talk about it.
That's crazy, because I actually really enjoyed episode 1.
Well, so did I. I'm definitely not saying I didn't like 1, 2, or 3. I just think that 1, 2, and 3 are more build up for the stuff that's gonna happen in the series, and then you get into okay, it's actually we're putting all this stuff into place, kind of.
That's got to be a trick of the trade for TV writing, because the exact same thing happened for X-Men 97, where it's the first 2 episodes come out simultaneously and they're pretty good, and then 3 and 4 come out and they're all right, but then episode 5 is the whole point of the entire season, you know? That's that's a different level of high quality television.
Yeah. Okay. Justin Timberlake.
Dude.
Share.
So he got arrested over the weekend, and I don't want to,
I heard he pulled out a "Do you know who I am?"
It's funnier than that. So I don't want to punch people while they're down. I have nothing against Justin Timberlake. I actually kind of like some of his music.
Yeah, so do I.
But the way he got pulled over, and the fact that all the headlines say cop was too young to even know who Justin Timberlake is.
Yeah.
He didn't recognize his face or his name on the driver's license.
I don't believe that for 1 second. I don't believe that someone, they said he's even if he was 19, which seems young for a cop. I think that's what my sister.
Do we have 19-year-olds?
I think that's what my sister said. He was 19.
being cops.
Every 19-year-old in the world knows who Justin Timberlake is. Every 13-year-old, I could go up to every kid at St. Pius and ask them if they knew who Justin Timberlake is, and they'd know who he was. So I find this story a little hard to believe just based on the premise.
How funny would it be, though, if there was one person who didn't know who Justin Timberlake was, and that's the guy who arrested him?
That pulled him over.
And now everyone in that cop's life is trying to desperately to explain to him how famous this dude is. And they're like, come on, Sexy Back? Nope, never heard of it. Cry Me a River? What are you talking about? Yeah. He dated Britney Spears. Who's Britney Spears?
And
then he said going. this was the bar of the event. This was this has got to go into one of his songs now. He muttered under his breath, "This is going to ruin the tour." And the cop asked, "What tour?" And he said, "The world tour," and didn't elaborate. And everyone's making that a meme now, and I think that's hilarious.
It kind of bothers me when celebrities pull out the like, "Don't you know who I am?" thing. But I get the feeling Justin Timberlake I wasn't saying that like an asshole. I'm guessing he was like joking. He seems like more the type of guy with a personality that's like, dude, are you serious? You don't know who I am? Like,
well, I had heard a story years ago that he had gone to like a Comic-Con dressed as like Kirby or something, some character. He's in a bodysuit. And he said it was the first time since he was a child that he's been able to step out in public without people like recognizing him as Justin Timberlake. And he enjoyed that. And it's like, that's the life he lives. And the one time it would maybe benefit him to be like, oh my God, you're Justin Timberlake. It's the person who doesn't know him.
I think my sister said something. He said like, dude, this is about to become like, I don't know. You're about to know who I am, maybe, or something like that. And I was like, he should have told the kid, you're about to become like the most famous police officer in the country, man. Like,
dude, you were gonna be memed so much more than that Tennessee cop who banged her whole precinct.
I didn't even know about that.
You really are unplugged now,
dude. I love it.
Yeah, there's a cop that's she was married and she just went viral because she had sex with every other cop in this city and like some of their husbands and wives and stuff.
Well, how else are women gonna get ahead? Just kidding.
Yeah.
More sarcasm.
But we're
in a silly mood today. We made some jokes maybe we shouldn't have made.
Anything we say about women, you can take in jest.
Okay. Anything else on Justin Timberlake? So how's this going to affect him? Was it serious? Was he like wasted out of his mind? What was his blood alcohol level? Do you know?
I don't know that the general public looks at drunk driving with much nuance. I don't think it matters. I mean, I know they say they basically watched him stumble to his car and then pulled him over. That's immediately.
Not great. If you're stumbling, that's really not great, you know.
Yeah, he did very poorly on like all the field tests, and then they were like, "Can you take this breathalyzer?" And they were like, "Can you take this breathalyzer?" And he's like, "Get your chemical test away from me."
Oh, Justin Timberlake, darn it. Okay.
Yeah, he was drunk, man.
Okay.
And they asked him,
"You can't be driving. This is not a joke. You can't be driving if you're drunk."
Yeah, call an Uber. I'm sure the Uber would have happily known who Justin Timberlake was.
Dude, and that's the thing. You've got so much money. Get a car service. Have a driver. If you are that rich and you know you're going to be drinking, have a driver who's ready to like just wait for you to come out. I don't understand it.
Taylor Swift would have had her private jet right there in the parking lot.
I mean,
ready to take her 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
And then I guess they asked him, all right, Mr. looks at card, Timberlake, what do you do for a living? And he said, I'm a professional. And he's like, what does that mean? And he goes, self-employed.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say annoys me. Why not take the like 30 seconds and explain it to the guy? and be like, dude, I'm like the most famous singer in the world. I have a world tour going on right now. Go and like Google my name for 1 second. That doesn't mean I should be allowed to drive drunk, but still, just like Google my name and then decide what you want to do. But I don't think he shouldn't get out of a drunk driving thing just because he's famous, right? It doesn't matter who he is.
Pay the consequences.
Drunk, definitely. Like, you don't. Yeah.
Also, this isn't going to ruin the world tour, Justin. The world tour was already not doing well. Like, ticket prices are insane, and all these A-list acts are having to cancel their tours because their fans just can't pay for them. And then he had that whole scandal last year with Britney Spears saying he forced her to get an abortion.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like,
dude, he's like, oh, man.
Dude, this hurting your tour that was already losing money is the least of your concerns.
I was about to be like, oh, man, Justin Timberlake's been really going through it, dealing with all the consequences of his actions. Gosh, this is tough for him.
This is why I can't leave Twitter, no matter how much I hate it. But someone had a banger of a tweet where they were like, I'd like to imagine his one phone call went to Jimmy Fallon.
Why is that?
Because they're like best friends. He's like always on that show. I think they did like a week one time where he co-hosted.
I think so. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for him. I hope his tour picks up because he's got to afford that lawyer somehow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should give out free tickets to it to a lucky listener.
How are we going to afford those tickets? We could.
The price is going to drop, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, it might. Yeah.
I don't think we could give away Justin Timberlake tickets. I don't think we have that kind of crossover with our listeners.
Okay, how about this? How about we do a giveaway? All right?
Dude, how about we try and get him on the pod? This can be like his tell-all.
Yep, that's a better idea than the one I was thinking of. Yep, let's do it. Okay, you reach out to JT on Twitter and be like, I know you're going through a lot. Maybe you could use an unbiased place to just share everything that's happening, you know?
Listen, man, I know you've been to a Comic-Con. Maybe you like Spider-Man. We'll do a little puff piece on you. It'll be great.
We'll do a little puff piece. Okay, Zach, do we have anything else? We did Doctor Who. We did The Boys. We did Justin Timberlake. We talked some X-Men. And then in the middle of it all, we did our Goblin podcast. Yep.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Pretty good.
Do you got a jam of the week?
No, I don't. And we need trivia of the week. We've got our new segment, trivia of the week.
All right, let me pull it out.
It's Spider-Man trivia time. Ding ding.
All right, John, how is Spider-Man's costume supposed to be colored? I didn't even know this one.
Spider-Man's colors are historically either red and blue or red and black, right? So, I don't know.
So, I'm not going to read the whole blurb this time because we're already running very long on this episode. But apparently, the original plan was to make him wear orange and purple.
Interesting.
That is very interesting because usually in comics...
So why did it get changed? Because
apparently they just got the colors wrong. Apparently Stan Lee had it in the notes that he was orange and purple, and I guess they did it wrong. But that's interesting because usually like secondary colors go to villains and primary colors go to heroes. There's like a visual code that's usually in comics.
Did you know that the Hulk was supposed to be gray?
Yes, that's why he's gray in the Ultimate Universe.
We probably have already talked about that one then.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I'm 0 for 1. How many do we do each week? 3?
Why is there a hyphen in between Spider and Man? This is another one I didn't know.
fucking know because the English language. I don't. Okay, let's think. Is there actually a reason for this? Didn't Batman used to be hyphenated also, but it's just not hyphenated anymore? I don't know.
I don't know that I believe this, because this is something Stan Lee tweeted in 2010, and he's famous for just making up history and saying that that's what he did.
Okay.
He says
it's one of those things.
Yeah, he says it wasn't an accident. It was so people didn't confuse him with Superman, which is all one word.
Well, those are two different words, Stan Lee.
Yeah. And it's got this nice picture in the book of Stan Lee ripping off his clothes to reveal a Superman S under him.
I to be honest, I don't actually like that Spider-Man is hyphenated, and I never write it hyphenated when I'm writing it out. And I don't even think about it like it's hyphenated.
I am team hyphenated because I was that annoying kid who was like a Spider-Man super fan, and when people got it wrong, I could actually them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, John, little known fact about me, I used to be insufferable. All right, last one. True or false? The publisher's first reaction was people hate spiders.
The public's first reaction to
the publisher's first reaction.
Oh, the publisher, true.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep. Apparently that's true.
I can see how they'd be like, spiders? We don't want to make a spider character.
Which would be a really dumb sentiment after Batman had already been famous for like 20 years. But I guess they said it.
When there are bugs in your house, do you kill them?
Oh, for sure. Actually, we have a little...
Well, actually, Zach, you're so insufferable.
We have a little tradition where Shiloh will point at it and yell, boog! And then I will say, time to send him to buggy hell. And then I'll crush him.
That's awesome. I sometimes kill bugs. If I can save them, I will save them. But I never save spiders because they're gross. And I never save flies because they'll fly, or you gotta just kill them. And then I'm actually really mean. I use chemical warfare on these things, and I will hit them with some cleaning spray before I go to kill them because I don't want them squirming around when I kill them. So I know that probably like burns all of their like skin off, but
Jesus
Christ. The easiest way. But I do try to save them when I can. We're all God's creatures, Zach.
Except even the ones that you torture before killing.
I don't torture them. That's just how I kill them.
Okay. Yeah.
My friends Chris and Annie, they have a like young 3-year-old, or no, probably about like 4 or 5 at this point, but probably 4. They have a book, and it's called Be Nice to Spiders. Have you ever heard of that children's book?
No.
And that's like she will grow up like being nice to spiders and being the type of person that's like, no, don't kill it. Spiders are good for the environment. They do this and this and this, right? Because that's like what that book is about. It's like, be nice to spiders. They're helpful.
I love the spiders outside of my house because we live in a really wet area and we have a lot of mosquitoes. So I'm like, yeah, more the merrier. Take those out. But then, like, if you come into my living space, rip bozo.
I'm the same way. I'm about to rip bozo.
About to punch your ticket.
Okay, so what did I went 1 for 3 on trivia this week. Okay.
I think they're getting harder.
Those were definitely harder. Okay, let me think of a jam of the week really quickly. Let's go with The Gambler. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, by Kenny Rogers. Spider-Man mentions Kenny Rogers in this week's episode because she says, I'm thinking of dating Kenny, and he says Kenny Rogers. And I'm actually going to Chicago this weekend for a little golf and poker weekend with the boys. So
let's go. That
Yep.
sounds like the most John trip I've ever heard of.
It's going to be awesome. I've been playing so well recently.
I hope you have a blast.
You doing anything fun this weekend?
Gonna swim later today.
Excellent.
I think that's about it.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right. You got anything else?
Nope. That's it for me.
Episode 71 in the books. Thank you
right.
to Ian Hickey for our music and Alyssa Seaman for the artwork. And thank you all for listening and leaving us a review or a comment. You can find us the First Read Ultimate Spider-Man podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or anywhere else you can download podcasts. And you can come chat with us or leave us a message on Instagram at First Read Podcast. Send us an email at firstreadspidey@gmail.com or find us on YouTube, First Read Ultimate Spider-Man Podcast. See you next week.
See ya.